How often do you feel angry? 10 to 14 times a day, they tell us. 10 to 14 times a day, we feel angry. Anger is a daily experience in the lives of most adults, humans. Jesus got angry. Mary got angry. It happens all the time. It happens at work. It happens at home. It can turn on and off quickly. Anger is a program in the amygdala. I always love that word, amygdala. And when it turns on, it is really on. And when it turns off, it is really off. But there are many of us who live with what I call a low-grade anger. You can see it in their face as soon as you look at them. You can tell they're getting ready to pounce. You can tell they're annoyed, they're irritated, they're trying so hard to keep it down in the name of God or somebody else, and it gets in the way. And out of that low-grade anger, there's the pounce. Anger is the dominant human emotion. Anger is disruptive, and it can be dangerous. To express it can be dangerous, but so can it be dangerous to repress it. It is most often experienced in attacks, verbal or physical. The rage we feel sometimes is anger's tornado. Anger is what creates the enemies this gospel talks about. It's our undealt with angers that turned into something else and turned somebody else into an enemy. There's lots of anger in the world right now. It's formidable, this energy is. And I think we can feel it sometimes. The fact that there's a lot of anger in the world is not a newsflash to any of us. I think almost all of us are feeling it. And there are a lot of good reasons to be angry. And our anger is a legitimate response to so many things going on out there. It can be the news we've just watched. It could be some injustice going on in the world. It could be something in our families, it usually is, or something even in ourselves, like when we fail or goof up, and some of us are very hard on ourselves. And it's all just anger, even at ourselves. There comes a time when we need to learn how to live with our anger. And we need to learn how to make different choices than we have so far over our lifespan with that anger. And begin to chip away at that formidable energy we call anger. There also comes a time when we have to learn how to take responsibility for that anger. Yes, something happened. Yes, someone did something or said something that was a result that resulted in us this intense emotion of anger at some level or another. But the emotion of anger and what I choose to do with it is nobody's responsibility but my own. It is not the responsibility of the person who did something that resulted in my anger to fix my anger. It is not. And to do that will only put more anger into the world and more hurt. But the emotion of anger and what I choose to do with it is just my responsibility, no one else's. And if I get angry because you hurt me and I punch, that punch, which will be held up in the courts of law of this country, will be my fault, not yours for making me angry. And that's just an exaggeration of what happens all the time. If I get angry because you hurt me, what I do with that is totally mine. I have to take responsibility for the anger I feel and how I expressed it and what it left others with. Each of us is responsible for our anger. If you cut me off on the highway, if you sneak up in line in front of me after I waited 30 minutes, I will feel angry, I can promise you that. But if I flip you off, or if I start to tailgate you, or I honk again and again, that is my choice. But two things. We know now that aggressive responses to anger, in other words, if I play out anger because of anger, it only makes us more angry. We think we're cathartic. We're not. It creates even more anger in us. And we also know that we get something out of it, out of this emotional reaction. It's almost like in this country right now, and perhaps for most of us, we could say, I emotionally react, therefore I am. Our egos get involved quickly in this. We're trying desperately to regain control of what we can't control. This intense energy of anger quickly leads to an impulse reaction. We want to get even. We want to get even so badly. We want to teach them a lesson. We want them to know how much suffering they caused us. We want to right the wrong. If we are to love our enemies, we need to start with our angers. Jesus says clearly in this gospel, love your enemy. It's a step forward in the world religions. But if we're ever going to get there, we need to start with anger. And that's actually the passage from last Sunday and the rest of this Sermon on the Mount we've been opening up these Sundays. The great religions of Buddhism and Christianity are going to offer us an alternative. Now, let me tell you right now, as soon as I mention Buddhism as a good thing, some of you will have an angry reaction. That's the truth. That's the truth. And somebody will say something to me angry about why am I touting Buddhism in a Catholic church. The great religions of Buddhism and Christianity are going to offer us an alternative to the experience of anger and the quick desire to fight with words or actions. Anger, flight. And we've learned from Buddhism, because God works in Buddhism as well, with great truth. And we've learned from Christianity that we can take a breath. We can take a breath between these angers and the reaction. We can take a breath that could be pregnant with love, that could have only entered into that moment and unplied us from that quick reaction. We can slow down our breathing, and in that sacred place between anger and reaction, we can come to this place of equanimity. In that brief, long, slow breath, I can find freedom. In that brief, long, slow breath, I can find freedom to not just react, but to act in a way that does not leave the world more angry than it was before. In that brief space between anger and response, I can find the freedom that I might need to act like I want to act instead of react in a way that brings me down, undercuts my dignity and my peace, and yours as well. We can learn how to sit with that feeling, you know? Sit with it. Just a little bit longer before we do anything with it, just a little tiny fraction of a second longer. And we can be in that second in awareness, almost as if we're watching ourselves from out here. Awareness, though, that when I get angry and why I get angry. We want to act on it quickly when we get angry, and most of us regret what we said or did. But in this space, we can decide we are not looking to get even. We are not looking to regain power. Rather, we're looking at staying connected to this other human being and to ourselves. We're looking to address the situation and communicate our thoughts about it clearly. Also, in that space, we can ask some very important questions, like, why did that bother me so much? Do I really think they meant to hurt me? Am I interpreting what happened through what it means to me and what I would mean if I did that and putting that on them? How many times are we angry only to end up hearing a valid explanation? And are we angry because we're projecting our own stuff to someone else? When I get angry, I need to remember that they are not me. They're not me. They don't do life like I do it. And in that space, I can ask one last question. Have I ever done this to anybody before? What they did to me, have I ever done that to anybody ever before? I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, it's pretty hard to be angry at someone who just did something that we know we have done. In that space, there's a new kind of openness. And in that openness, new kinds of options occur to us. That also honors my anger. It honors my anger. In that spaciousness, we're not avoiding the emotion of anger, nor are we getting stuck in the emotion. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite. And if we can just allow the anger, we will become more aware of our humanity. We will also be allowing our uniqueness. By allowing the anger, we will also be allowing it to go somewhere else than where it always used to go. We don't need to cover our negative feelings with positive ones. We don't. Each of us is entitled to feel what we feel, what we feel. We all are. Make no mistake about it, this is a spiritual practice. This is a spiritual practice I'm describing to you. And if we practice this spiritual practice, we will be enabling a whole new world where people don't just keep reacting and don't just keep creating more enemies, even in their own families, to each other, and there will be peace. Those questions I asked when anger comes, I welcome you to ask me, even in the midst of my anger when you see it. You are welcome to ask me all those questions I just proposed to you, because they're the questions I want to get to before I keep reacting. Stop me, tell me to take a breath. And then, if I don't get defensive, ask me where this might be coming from in you, Gary. Ask me if there's another way to respond to this. Ask me everything I just said, because I want to be free. And I don't want to add any more wounds to the wounding of the world. I don't. But I also know that I'm not always going to do anger well. It's inevitable that I'll feel anger again. And many times with people I know well and love, I will be angry. We all will. Never feeling angry is not the goal. We'll all have lots of missed opportunities, misunderstandings, and annoyances, and lots of opportunities to practice responding to anger a little more calmly and a little more productively, just a little more. Slowing down our breathing when it starts racing, just with a couple long, slow breaths in this process before I respond, can make all the difference in the world. As I said, there is a place in our brains where all this happens. It's called the amygdala. It is a part of each of our brains, and it is where anger and actually other intense emotions happen. So I'm going to end this reflection on anger and what perhaps we can do with that to stay in freedom by asking you to join me in a prayer of blessing for nothing other than our amygdala. St. Paul in that second reading talked about the goodness of our bodies and every part of our body and how it belongs. I think it's time to say yes to our amygdala and its good work, even though sometimes it gets carried away. So if you're comfortable doing it, place your hand right there, just in front of your amygdala. Holy amygdala, we welcome you, and we welcome you as a gift, even though sometimes what you produce for us, which is your work, is something we don't like. Holy amygdala, you're always doing your work, and it's so important and so powerful that we need to invite God right now into your holy work. Holy creative God, bless this piece of our bodies that is a piece of our brains that you've given us, that creates and holds our angers. Hold it tenderly for us. Shine your light into that ever-happening place. Connect the part of us, this is our amygdala, with the amygdala of Jesus, so that we may be holy. And help us to befriend those angers when they come up in us. Help us listen and learn from them. Help us have a sense of humor about our angers and integrate them into your passion for the kingdom. Holy amygdala, with God's good grace, may we integrate your work into our lives. May we be healed, and may we be transformed, and the whole world with us. Please, God.